Hello, welcome to Bloke on the Range, and this was going to be a simple follow-up video on the L2A2 SUIT site, or as some of the old and bold have reminded me, it was often called the SUIT site, like suet pudding, but anyway, I'll stick with SUIT because I'm sure that's how most people will be reading it. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that I have the Primary Arms SLx 3x microprism mounted on the rifle now, and the reason for that is while doing the shooting for what this video was going to be, this happened. Ah. 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 Wow. Okay. That answers that one. Oh my God. So I've ended up with a second scoping scar to accompany the first one I got back in the 90s when I was a kid. And as we like to say on the channel, it's not Bloke on the Range unless something goes wrong. So what we're going to do is work with the footage we've got and hopefully construct something at least vaguely interesting out of it. Now I'd just like to take a little break right now just to say the usual: please like and subscribe, please consider supporting us on Patreon, etc. It really helps us to replace things like this SUIT site that's self-destructed. So what we'll do now is just go over to the table and have a look at what happened here. One further weakness I forgot to mention in the previous video is these rivets here that help to hold the top part of the rail onto the top cover. They have a habit of coming loose as well, and at that point just all bets are off, just forget it. Now if we hold this intact here, what's happened is that on recoil this has gone bink and gave me a nice Glasgow kiss. So this actually reveals part of the structure of what's going on here. So what we've got here is a conventional looking brittle fracture in tension of the aluminium part of it, and then we've got what is quite clearly epoxy up here, and this actually reveals the purpose of this seam. So you've got the scope body, and then the mount part that fixes onto the rail is actually a separate part epoxied on, which is, yes, so you've got epoxy acting in tension and then actually relatively little material acting in tension. Now this is not a common failure, but there's at least one other one seen online, and someone actually managed to dismantle it, get the bottom part of the base off, and weld it back together and get something workable, which is impressive work, I must say. So yeah, bit of an epic fail there. So what I was going to try to do was shoot a group with iron sights as a baseline, and using some known good ammunition, which was some 1993 MEN German NATO ball surplus, which is excellent stuff. I've been carting it around for almost 15 years now, finally getting to use it. Then put the scope on, shoot a group using 10 round groups because 5 rounds isn't really enough. Take it off, put it back on again, rinse and repeat, and see what results we get. And this was actually the second time I'd done this, because I'd done it before a while back, but the results were kind of inconclusive, and I wasn't convinced in hindsight that I'd been making sure that the range lever was in the 300 meter position instead of the 500 meter position. So that's why I was doing it again, and I'm kind of glad I did, because I'd rather have that failure in testing here in Switzerland than if I'd given into my impulses to use the original equipment despite it being unreliable at the match at Finnish Brutality, and then getting it in my face on the clock there. That would have been rather even less fun than it already was. So this time I'd been putting the scope on and off for filming the previous video. I'd got a replacement spring which was actually weaker than the original, so I played with the springs, and it's literally only the spring that's holding it on there. It's not like in a normal quick release mount. It is literally the lever just manipulates the spring, and it is just the spring holding it on. And if the mount was still attached, I could show you that it just pulls up off the mount. You can pull against the spring. Pretty crazy, to be honest. And previously, when I've done it before, it was shooting a little bit up and a little bit left at 50 meters. So cold barrel irons. First group with the SUIT. SUIT off, on again. Second group with the SUIT, off and on again. Then it didn't shift too much, and the group was about that. There's a couple off the top there. So that's kind of comparable to that. SUIT off and on again after having let it cool down a bit, and we've got a flyer there, and then a not so great group, and then hot barrel irons. This time I had a bit of a worry because I was aiming at the bottom target and the shots were going like in the middle of the one above it, so about that much high at 50 meters. So that was with the irons, and with the SUIT sight before it fell off, I was aiming here and it was shooting here. Yay. Moved it down, or should have been about 10 inches. Fired two, that's probably the first, and that's probably when the scope flew off and hit me in the face. Yay. So I think that possibly shows you all you need to know about the repeatability and the reliability of this quick detach mechanism. There's a couple of old and bold in the comments under the earlier video saying that they never had problems with it. I suspect that that's more of a sign of the general standard of shooting and the infrequency with which live rounds were fired. Seriously, sorry guys, call me a civvy, Walt, Knut, or whatever you want. I don't care. I think that's probably the reality of what's going on there, but just miles off. Absolutely miles off, like disastrously miles off. And given that these were used in Northern Ireland, where there's a serious risk of collateral damage, I think that's probably suboptimal. So anyway, after having recovered, more or less, still bleeding a bit, I went to fitting the DS Arms rail, which has the integrated ACOG mounting points, because the primary arms copy the ACOG mounting geometry. So I've mounted it in what is basically the same position, or the ocular lens is in basically the same position as it is on the SUIT. You've got much more generous eye relief, eye box on here than on the SUIT. It is possible to mount it lower, mounting it directly on the mount, but that puts it further forward, and you're working towards the rear of the eye box, and then when you're standing and your head's further back. I mean, if I just take a natural standing, eye box is kind of usable to about there, and I'm already there. Optimum's there. So this works out at basically optimum eye relief for prone shooting. I bore sighted it.
Way too
I
low.
zeroed it after having zeroed the iron sights previously for the 123 grain Sarco ammunition that our generous match sponsors Sarco are providing to us. The idea being, if something goes wrong with the rail or it loses zero something, I can always pop the rail off or pop the sight off, which I can't do on the clock because it needs... in fact, I had to take the rail off to take the sight off. It means that I can always pop the sights up after having knocked the rail off and carry on with iron sights. Now, the other interesting thing was to shoot a group, a 10-round group with the Sarco ammunition, and off the bench I plugged in a 2.5 Moa group, which for a very, very light barreled and not almost antediluvian semi-auto rifle, I thought was pretty good. In fact, I was extremely impressed. And previously, off the irons at 300, I'd shot 2.5-ish Moa groups as well. It cycles the rifle fine. I did try some of it a while back in a full 30-round magazine, and that also cycles the rifle fine. But I've got the gas down on 2. This one likes the gas to be quite high. Strangely enough, it's an exhaust system, so the higher the number, the less gas you've got acting on the piston, because 12 is the most open setting, squirts more gas out sideways, upwards, rather than letting it actually work on the gas piston. What I also thought would be a bit of an interesting thing to look at would be the difference in point of impact with the MEN 1993 NATO ball, and some Saltec, because I'm going to do a training. I can't film next Saturday compared to the day of filming, which is the Saturday before Finnish Brutality. I'm going to take this rifle up into the mountains for training on a military range. Not allowed to film, but I'm going to run my gear as close as I'm allowed to get it. We're not allowed to run around in camo, so I'm going to be wearing plain green. But otherwise everything's going to be basically the same, but I'm going to have to run Saltec because it's what I've got. And Saltec varies between really, really, really excellent and tonk. And what I've got at the moment is tonk. The group is big compared to the NATO ball, let alone compared to the Sarco. But then the Sarco is really, really excellent stuff. So as a reminder, that was the Sarco 123. Then we have MEN, which is great stuff, and Saltec, which is not. That was not the most stable shooting I've ever done in my life, though. And then I did a slight sight adjustment with the Sarco, and I saw one go left, probably two. I think that's probably good. Aiming there, 1.5 inches high. And that's kind of line with that. I think I'll probably leave it, maybe bring it down 2 clicks. So half a mower and call it a day. So both the 147 grain German NATO ball and the 147 grain Saltec end up shooting higher and further to the left. What I've ended up with, because I'm at 50 meters, I'm trying to use the ACSS Raptor as it's intended. So I've got it going about 2 inches. Yes, I'm mixing units. About 2 inches above the chevron at 50 meters. So most of the shooting at Finnish Brutality is at about 50 meters. So if I'm holding a couple of inches down, that's good. And then at 100, I should be about on. I think the probably shots out to about 140 as usual. And then I know where I am in the reticle. It's a clever reticle. I like what they do with ACSS. It is clever. It is a good deal. So anyway, I think that about wraps it up. I'm looking forward to running this in 2 weeks in Finland. I hope that you'll follow along too. When we're up there, we'll do a rundown of the kit once it's finalised and we're actually on the range. But basically, it's an alified sort of 3 water bottle pouch plus 44 pattern water bottle pouch set up because I need enough space for the holster, and 68 pattern togs, and yeah, old and bold Cold War style, with the exception of a sight that is doing what the suit was trying to do but failed at due to it being crap. So anyway, I hope that was vaguely interesting. As I said earlier, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Or Player. It really helps us to keep the channel chugging along. And see you again sometime. Bye.